Hello everybody and welcome to Cameras and Coffee. Today let's talk about my community post from this weekend discussing my clumsiness with cameras. But first, today I am enjoying from my mocha pot, which is making this exceptionally nice cup of coffee, from the Queen Bean Coffee Company, the Panama Geisha. So really nice, rich, very, very flavorful coffee. Yeah, that's a good one. That's a very good one. Okay. So over the weekend, many of you will have seen my community post about dropping a rented EOS R100 and 50mm f1.8 lens into a waterfall. And many of you also shared your stories, and I know that I am far from the only person who's done this. It's just been a very long time since I dropped camera gear and had it damaged, and then to have to do it twice in one weekend was unpleasant. So the last time I did it before this was had my Pentax LX and 28mm f2.8 SMCA on it, and a very strong wind knocked it over while I was doing a Star Trails photo. Destroyed the lens, but the camera was fine. So on Saturday I went out and I was hiking up to Chihuahua Lake here in Colorado. Great hike, and an absolutely amazing lake at the end. And 3/4 of a mile in, there's a stream crossing with a little cascade, and I'm like, oh, I'll go take a photo of this cascade. I have the R100 around my neck with the 50 on it, and I have the 16-2.8 in my one pocket, my cell phone in the other. Thank goodness my cell phone was not in my back pocket. And I walked out on the rocks. I do this all the time. Like, this is a very frequent thing for me, and I've never fallen over until right over on the rocks. Landed on my back on it, some deadfall. Had my Pentax K1 and the Irix 11mm in my backpack, landed right on it. They weren't damaged at all. So that was good. Stand up, I'm a little bit wet. The camera, the R100, got splashed, but it still powers on. The 16-2.8's in my pocket. My cell phone, I grab it, screen's not broken, thank goodness. So I set those things on a rock on the shore, take off my backpack, because my water bottle and my hat had gotten taken off in the fall. So I went and I was able to scurry out and get my hat and stay dry, and I bring it back, and as I put it on, and as I do to turn around and look for where my water bottle is, I put my hand on the rock. This is a big rock. This rock is almost as big as Steinbeck. It's not small, and it tilts. And the lens, camera, and my cell phone all go off of it at the same time. I grab my cell phone, obviously, because that's my lifeline. If I have an emergency, I'm going to need that, and if it's destroyed, I'm going to be in serious trouble. The lens falls into the rapids right there and just lands on a rock and hangs out. And then the camera and its strap just kind of tumble into the water and roll down, and I'm like, shit, well, they're ruined, but I'll go grab them in a sec. So I grab the lens out of the water, and I grab my cell phone, I put them up on shore, and I go to grab the camera. It's not there. At this point, I'd fallen in the water again. I had water in my boots. I was soaked. I knew the hike was over. So I went down. I'm searching around, trying to find the camera, get to my water bottle, toss it up on shore. I walked up and down that waterfall, feeling around for the camera. Couldn't find it. So, wasn't hurt. I mean, arms cut up, legs are cut up from and all that, but what didn't tear any muscles or break anything, so that's good. So I get my stuff. I look around the waterfall, like I climb around it for about half an hour. And the water in Colorado in the mountains at this time of year is still snow melt. So the water is about 40 to 42 degrees. It's brutally cold. So after I give up, I grab all my stuff and I slowly walk back to my car, drive home, get warmed up, call Lens Rentals and let them know what happened. So end of that story is that I bought them their camera today. Ended up being 500 some odd dollars, 560, 570 lens and camera, plus the rental fee. It sucks, it's not the end of the world. At any rate, so thank goodness, my thought as I'm crawling around in the waterfall is thank God I did not rent something like a Z8 or whatever the most expensive Nikon Z is with that huge Nocton 50mm lens that I would really love to test. Although if I had rented those, I would not have been walking out into a waterfall with them, I promise. At any rate, so I did the only sound thing that, you know, an adult man does when he's in pain, and drank a lot. And that night, woke up and my wife and one of our friends decided, hey, let's go on a hike Monday. And I said, let's go back to Chihuahua Lake. This is a good hike. This will be a good way to break our friend into a hard Colorado hike, which he hadn't done yet. And then while we're out there, I'm going to crawl around in that waterfall and look for my camera, not my camera, now my camera, again. And so we did the whole hike, 8.5 miles, 2,000 feet in gain. And then on the way back, I said, all right, guys, I'm going to look for this thing. Stripped down to my socks, my underwear, and my shirt. And the socks, because the rocks were very slippery, and I knew that, and actually my friend suggested this, and this was a good call on his part, the socks would provide traction and some protection against my feet getting cut up, and he was spot on about that. So I spent almost an hour, it was about 45, maybe 50 minutes, crawling around in my hands and knees in this waterfall. There's a little pool at this river crossing. It gets very wide, about 1.5 truck lengths wide, and the water gets really, really slow. It seems like the camera should have settled out there, if not beforehand. So I scour that, no problem, and then I just start climbing up the rocks, like reaching underneath every single rock, reaching underneath them, feeling around, trying to feel the strap, the lens, whatever. All I got was hypothermia. And so 45 minutes later, I gave up. I walked down to the end of the pool, and there's another set of waterfalls. It goes about 85, 90 feet down. I just said, you know what? I cannot safely climb that. Even if it's down there, I'm not doing it. So on Saturday, I was so cold that I had the car's heated seat on high and the steering wheel heater on, and I still, when I got home, had trouble moving my fingers. And I was only in the water for half an hour and not climbing around on my hands and knees the whole time. So Monday, after I did that, I sat down to get my clean change of clothes on that I brought specifically because I knew I was going to do this, and could not. I was so hypothermic that when I sat down, like every muscle cramped. And my first thought on that was, well, I'm glad this didn't happen while I was in the waterfall, right? Because that would have been a real problem. So as my wife is helping me, and our friend is helping me get my socks and a clean shirt and everything back on, because I can't move. I can't even move my fingers enough to tie the laces on my hiking boots. Like that was a humbling experience, to say the least. Anyway, we do all that, and then we walk back to the car, have a great time sitting in traffic for 4.5 hours because 2 people decided to have an accident inside the tunnel on 70, and then 2 other people decided to have an accident at the bottom of the the Loveland Pass, apparently. So the 2 ways back home to Denver were blocked by accidents, according to the report on the internet. But the point of all of this story, which I hope has been modestly entertaining at least, is don't take undue risks when you have camera gear. Oh, I forgot the second part of the story. That's the moral of the story. But here's another important part of it. I mentioned I dropped cameras twice this weekend. So we're up at Chihuahua Lake on Monday, and my wife and our friend are up having lunch, and I'm down at the lake getting photos of it, and I have this little travel tripod. Sorry, Steinbeck, go back to sleep. that I take with me because it's like the perfect size. I can just hook it into the bottom of my backpack here and here, and then it just hangs on the bottom of my backpack while I'm hiking. And then I can just reach behind my back and undo it without even taking my backpack off. It's perfect. So I have it set up with my Pentax K1 and the IRIX 11mm on top of it. And it's sitting on top of a rock. The rock's kind of flat. And I feel out of nowhere this wind. My first thought is, my camera. And as I'm about to turn around, I hear the K1 and the IRIX tumble down 5 feet of rocks into more rocks. The wind, once again, trying to destroy one of my Pentaxes. Amazingly, they're just fine. That's a heavy camera kit, right? The K1, I picked it up. I haven't looked at the photos yet, but the screen turned green for the first couple of shots, and then everything went back to normal. The IRIX, there's a little scuff on the outside of the lens hood. The lens is just fine. The element is just fine. Focus is just fine. There's no damage to the mechanism or the mount. There's 3 little tiny dings in the rear screen on the K1, which is kind of amazing considering that the screen was folded out at the time when it fell. I'm very happy that the struts weren't damaged or the screen wasn't torn off. So the point of this whole story has been, don't take undue risks with your gear. That's what I did. It was a mistake on my part. And I did that twice in a weekend. Walking into a waterfall, I should have been more cautious about walking into, or not even done at all, especially carrying someone else's camera. And also not having a wide enough footprint on my tripod because I wanted a specific framing for the images and was more concerned about that. And as long as there had been no wind, it would have been no issue, but then mountains, they have wind. So anyway, that's the moral of that story, is be careful with your stuff. There are inexpensive cameras, and those are the ones you take risks with. But with the nice gear, even if you're going into a situation where it's a little bit riskier, always just remember to be cautious with it, because you don't want to injure yourself. You don't want to destroy your equipment, because it oftentimes does represent a significant investment of your time, the time needed to raise the money to purchase that equipment. And you also don't want to get into a position where you are watching something you have purchased or borrowed or rented be destroyed because you did something kind of silly. So at any rate, that's today's video. Thank you everybody for watching, and feel free as always to post your stories about camera equipment you've destroyed in the comments. I do hope that shared storytelling will make all of us who have been here feel a little bit better. Have a good week.